What if I told you that an empty stomach at night isn't just a minor discomfort, but a death sentence? Imagine, it's 40 degrees below zero outside, an icy wind cuts through your clothes like a razor, and your only chance of waking up in the morning depends on what exactly you ate before bed. The indigenous peoples of North America learned this harsh rule thousands of years ago, paying for it with hundreds of lives. The long winters on the Great Plains and in the endless northern forests forgave no mistakes. It was a true battle for survival, where the enemy was not hunger, but the cold, sucking the energy from every cell in your body. Those who disregarded the ancient traditions of stockpiling simply did not live to see the dawn. But how did these people manage to turn their bodies into living furnaces, capable of withstanding extreme temperatures without modern technology or heaters? Their methods for retaining heat and sustaining life were based on a profound, almost magical understanding of the laws of nature and human physiology. And one of these secrets lies in their diet. Watch this video to the end, and you'll learn what that very special evening meal consisted of. The one that revved up their metabolism to the max and guaranteed the warriors a peaceful sleep, even in the fiercest blizzard. We'll explore forgotten recipes for fuel for life and reveal the tricks that allowed entire tribes to survive the polar night. You won't find this in history textbooks. Get ready, it's going to be hot. Are you ready to learn the truth about how ordinary food replaced the thickest blankets for people? The Native Americans of the Great Plains viewed food not merely as a remedy for nagging hunger. For them, every piece of dried meat was the equivalent of a log tossed into a blazing fire. The body was viewed as a complex mechanism requiring constant, high-quality fuel to maintain a high internal temperature. In winter, this continuous heating process became critically important for every member of the tribe, without exception. The harsh climate dictated its own brutal rules of survival on the open steppe. Nighttime temperatures could drop to critical levels, with an icy wind piercing the thin leather walls of the teepee. In such harsh conditions, a regular fire inside the dwelling was completely insufficient to fully heat the entire space. People needed a powerful internal heat source capable of working without interruption until the very first light of dawn. A properly selected and balanced diet successfully triggered these life-saving heat exchange processes in the body of every Native American. Light, lean food could in no way provide the necessary effect of long-term warmth in the cold. Simple carbohydrates burn too quickly, leaving the sleeping person completely without energy in the middle of a cold night. Indigenous peoples intuitively understood the huge difference between energy that burns quickly and energy that lasts a long time. They relied primarily on foods with the absolute highest caloric density. It was precisely these heavy natural fats that served as the main guarantee that the body would not cool down during long periods of sleep. The process of digesting such heavy and dense food took many long hours. The stomach worked like a huge, continuous furnace, releasing precious degrees of heat directly into the body's internal systems. This vital heat slowly spread throughout all the limbs, reliably warming the fingers and toes. People slept on soft beds made of thick bison hides, reliably retaining this generated energy right around themselves. This symbiosis of proper winter nutrition and good insulation worked wonders for daily survival. As a result of this coordinated effort, enormous reserves of phenomenal energy value were created. A single small leather pouch could contain the caloric content of an entire modern-day massive pantry. These nutrient-rich concentrates were surprisingly easy to transport during frequent migrations, thanks to their lightweight and small size. They were completely unaffected by sudden temperature changes and did not lose their nutritional properties over time. Ancient Native American culinary technologies in many ways surpassed many modern methods of long-term food storage without refrigerators. The daily winter diet differed radically from the lighter and more varied summer menu. Daily portions became significantly smaller in volume, but were incredibly difficult to digest. The body quickly adapted to this specific diet, extracting maximum benefit from every bite. The body's overall metabolism completely shifted to a special winter mode of maximum energy conservation and reliable heat retention. An ordinary person literally transformed into a resilient being, perfectly adapted to the harshest frosts. Even during the most unpredictable and difficult times, the Native Americans strove to strictly adhere to these ancient dietary rules. They wisely stretched their precious fat reserves, carefully mixing them with lower-calorie plant-based supplements. Just a single handful of such proper food could reliably sustain an adult hunter's strength for several days of arduous travel. This gave them a tremendous survival advantage over the first European settlers, who were completely unaware of these secrets. The local peoples rightly felt themselves to be the true masters of winter, rather than its helpless, random victims. A deep understanding of digestive processes helped the Native Americans endure temperatures at which other people would freeze very quickly. They structured their daily diet so that life-sustaining energy was released evenly throughout the dark hours of the night. It would be very interesting to hear your perspective on this conscious approach to food in one's own body. What do you think about applying such knowledge in today's harsh climates? Please share your thoughts in the comments. Be sure to subscribe to our channel to keep discovering new and fascinating historical facts. Guess how long it took to create the perfect product for long-term survival? This culinary masterpiece of the nomadic peoples of the Great Plains was perfected over many long centuries. Pemmican is rightly considered one of the most perfect survival foods in human history. Its production required immense patience, skill, and strict adherence to precise proportions. The result was a dense mass capable of retaining its freshness and nutritional value for several years. The basis for this dish was always top quality, absolutely lean meat from bison, deer, or elk. First, it was sliced into incredibly thin, almost translucent layers to maximize moisture loss. These slices were dried long and thoroughly under the scorching sun and strong steppe winds until they reached an incredibly hard state. Completely devoid of moisture, the raw material became brittle and easily crumbled in the hands at the slightest pressure. At this first stage, the product was already ready for long-term storage, but this was only half the battle. The finished mixture, still hot, was tightly packed into special bags sewn from thick rawhide. Air was carefully squeezed out of these bags to prevent any oxidation or spoilage of the valuable product. The seams were securely sealed with melted lard, creating a completely airtight and waterproof package for long-term storage. In this form, pemmican could sit in underground caches or teepees for years without losing its properties. A single leather bag could weigh several dozen kilograms and feed a small family for an entire winter. The energy value of this ancient superfood was simply astonishing and had no equal in those days. A small fist-sized block of pemmican contained the caloric value of several huge servings of ordinary roasted meat. It could be eaten dry on the go during a long, grueling trek across the snow-covered steppe. It was also often tossed into a pot of hot water to create a thick, incredibly filling and warming broth. The versatility of this dish made it absolutely indispensable during the constant winter migrations. Pemmican was not only food, but also a vital commodity for profitable trade between different tribes. Peoples living in areas abundant with game produced it on a massive industrial scale for trade. Later, this product became the primary currency in trade with the first European explorers and fur hunters. Fur trading companies purchased tons of Native American pemmican to supply their distant northern expeditions. Without this Native American invention, the exploration of the harsh northern territories would have been simply physically impossible. The recipe for this product varied depending on the specific region and available natural resources. Subarctic tribes might use caribou meat and add local tart cranberries to the mixture. The peoples of the southern plains preferred bison meat with the addition of sweet prairie roots and local nuts. But the basic principle of combining dried proteins with concentrated fats remained absolutely unchanged everywhere. This ingenious formula became a true triumph of human ingenuity in the struggle against the harsh climate. Properly prepared pemmican became a true lifesaver during the months when obtaining fresh food was completely impossible. Dozens of bags of this product were stacked in tight rows in dwellings, providing the tribe with reliable calories for the entire winter. Its dense texture and phenomenal nutritional value made it the ideal source of sustained energy for the human body. Do you think modern people could survive on such a harsh and heavy food for several long months? In the next chapter, you'll learn exactly which evening ritual involving thick fats turned the human body into a veritable furnace. The secret, passed down from generation to generation, lay in one remarkable Native American evening ritual. As the sun sank below the horizon and frost began to grip the prairie, a special bedtime ritual began in every teepee. Before lying down under the heavy animal skins, every member of the tribe received a small but incredibly important portion of food. It was thick animal fat, slowly melted over coals, poured into a small wooden or horn bowl. This unique drink was by no means intended merely to quench thirst or savor an exquisite flavor. For this purpose, the most valuable bear fat, or rendered internal fat, from other large ungulates was most often used. Bear fat was particularly prized for its smooth consistency and remarkable ability to remain liquid for long periods in the cold. It possessed a vast reserve of dense calories, which were instantly absorbed by the body and converted into pure energy. This liquid was drunk in small sips, allowing it to slowly run down the walls of the throat and coat the stomach. This tradition was strictly observed even on days when there was plenty of food. The main physiological purpose of this sip was to initiate the longest and slowest digestive process that would last all night. Once in the stomach, the dense fat required a tremendous internal effort to be fully broken down and absorbed. The digestive organs began to work actively, releasing a huge amount of internal heat directly into the human bloodstream. The blood carried this beneficial heat throughout the body, preventing both fingers and toes from freezing. A person would fall asleep with a sensation of pleasant and soothing warmth spreading throughout the abdomen. Interesting modern research fully confirms the incredible effectiveness of this ancient Native American method of warming. Consuming saturated fats before bed does indeed significantly raise the body's basal temperature for several long hours. Metabolism slows down, but it operates at maximum heat output, protecting all vital internal organs from hypothermia. The Native Americans arrived at this understanding through thousands of years of observing themselves and the surrounding animal world. They learned from the very bears that built up a thick layer of fat before their long winter hibernation. In addition to its warming effect, this fatty meal had a powerful calming effect on the human nervous system. The hearty food reduced the anxiety that always plagued people during the long, cold winter nights. The feeling of deep, heavy satiety brought peace of mind and instilled confidence in one's physical safety. The brain received a clear signal that resources were sufficient and that one could safely sink into restorative sleep. Psychological comfort was no less important for successful survival than physical health and the sturdy walls of the teepee. By morning, the fat reserves in the stomach were completely depleted, and the person woke up ready for a new day. A slight feeling of hunger compelled them to quickly rise from their warm bed and set about their daily winter duties. This cyclical system of energy intake and expenditure worked flawlessly throughout all the cold and dark months. The body grew accustomed to this schedule, and the evening ritual became the most anticipated moment of the entire day. It was a perfect harmony between the needs of the human body and the harsh conditions of the surrounding icy environment. This hearty evening meal ensured that the body would not begin to cool down in the middle of a long, frosty night. Thick bear fat coated the stomach lining, creating a feeling of constant fullness and unshakable inner peace. Anxiety about the cold was completely replaced by deep relief and firm confidence in a safe tomorrow. If you enjoyed this incredible historical fact about Native American survival, be sure to like this video. Your support helps us find and publish even more unique, forgotten historical materials and facts. What if everything you were taught about classic winter drinks is completely and hopelessly outdated? The indigenous peoples of the eastern forests and the northern subarctic actively use the most common trees to obtain moisture and vitamins. In the depths of a harsh winter, when fresh, succulent plants had long since disappeared beneath the snow, they turned to conifers and birch trees. The bark and green needles contained an incredible amount of essential nutrients needed to maintain robust health during the long, cold season. A hot forest brew made from these ingredients became their primary daily source of warmth and life-sustaining liquid. The process of preparing such winter tea was a true ritual, requiring knowledge of local botany and great care. The Native Americans carefully cut thin strips of bark from young willow or birch branches, taking care not to damage the tree itself. They also gathered fresh pine, spruce, or cedar needles, which remained green even in the bitterest frosts. The collected material was finally shredded and thrown into vessels of clean, icy water obtained from melted snow. The water was then brought to a boil using stones heated over a fire or sturdy clay pots placed over the flames. The use of hot stones was the oldest and most common method of boiling liquids among nomadic tribes. The stones were heated in the central hearth until red hot, and then carefully lowered into leather or wooden containers filled with water. The water instantly boiled, emitting a loud hiss, and thick steam filled the dwelling with the scent of fresh pine needles. The tree bark and needles quickly released their essential oils, coloring the water a pleasant greenish or brownish hue. The resulting drink had a very tart, resinous taste, to which the Indians grew accustomed from early childhood. Small pieces of valuable fat or crumbs of crushed pemmican were often added to the pine decoction to increase its caloric content. In this way, a simple herbal drink instantly turned into a full-fledged and incredibly nutritious liquid soup. It was easily digested, quickly warmed the body from the inside, and provided a noticeable burst of energy for working in the cold. Hunters always took small bags of dried pine needles with them into the forest to brew them during a rest stop. This simple and readily available resource was literally lying underfoot in any coniferous or mixed northern forest. The Native Americans viewed trees not merely as building material or firewood, but as living beings that provided food. They treated the forest with great respect, never stripping large amounts of bark from a single trunk. This philosophy of careful consumption allowed them to use the same groves for years without harming nature. Knowledge of how to properly gather the forest's winter gifts was passed down by word of mouth over many long generations. Without these hot drinks, their harsh winter diet, consisting solely of dried meat, would have been too difficult to sustain. Consuming such forest brews helped maintain hydration, which is critically important in extremely low temperatures. The hot, aromatic liquid instantly warmed a person from the inside, perfectly complementing the effects of dense, heavy, fatty food. The combination of high-calorie pemmican and hot pine tea created the perfect balanced diet for the harshest months of the year. Have you ever tried brewing fragrant tea from fresh pine needles during a long winter hike in the woods? In the next chapter, you'll learn how indigenous peoples managed to reliably store all these supplies in conditions of constant humidity. The Iroquois tribes, who lived in the eastern forests, built massive longhouses that served not only as spacious dwellings, but also as enormous food storage facilities. These imposing wooden structures were covered with large roofs made of elm or ash bark, providing the most reliable insulation against the elements. Inside such a house, there were usually neat rows of open hearths, from which the intense heat rose unimpeded. It was there, under the highest roof, that the driest, warmest, and safest place in the entire massive structure was found. A well-designed system of ventilation openings effectively drew out the acrid smoke, leaving only the necessary dry, warm air inside. The upper level of the longhouse was entirely devoted to a cleverly organized system for storing the tribe's various winter supplies. The Indians hung thousands of ears of harvested corn from the sturdy rafters, skillfully woven together by their dry leaves. Next to them were neatly arranged bundles of beans, dried pumpkins, and huge garlands of dried venison. Hot air from the fires, rising from the lower living level, constantly circulated around these foods, preventing them from becoming damp. In this way, the structure of the dwelling itself functioned as a giant, continuously operating drying and ventilation chamber. Moisture was the greatest enemy of any food supply in a climate with heavy winter and spring precipitation. If dried meat or corn absorbed water, they would inevitably rot and become deadly if consumed. The Iroquois were well aware of this constant threat and never left their food on the damp, earthen floor of their dwellings. Raising the supplies several meters off the ground was a brilliant and simple solution to this complex survival problem. The air under the roof always remained completely dry, thanks to the life-saving fires burning round the clock below. In addition to food, the upper shelves and poles also held supplies of medicinal herbs, tobacco, and dry tinder. All these items also required perfect dryness to preserve their beneficial natural properties throughout the year. The house became a veritable treasure trove, where the well-being and confidence in the future of its inhabitants hung above their sleeping heads. The scent of dried corn, smoked meat, and forest herbs permeated the wooden walls and the clothing of all the inhabitants. This unique aroma symbolized the wealth, abundance, and satiety for which everyone had worked during the warm months. As winter drew to its natural close, the supplies under the ceiling dwindled noticeably, and the beams gradually emptied. However, thanks to this storage system, food spoilage was virtually non-existent, and there was enough food to last until the very first spring greens appeared. The architecture of the longhouse was not merely a shelter from the wind, but also a complex engineering tool for long-term preservation. The Native Americans learned to control the microclimate inside their massive structures with a precision and wisdom remarkable for that time. They created an ideal artificial environment that served them faithfully for many glorious centuries. Any leak was immediately repaired through collective effort so that drops of cold rain would not spoil their precious food. Housing and food were inextricably linked in the minds of the Iroquois into a single system of uninterrupted life support for the entire clan. This monolithic concept of survival allowed them to build a strong and prosperous society in the harsh, wild wilderness. Are you ready for the shocking truth about the ancient underground storage sites of the Native Americans? Far from all of their supplies were kept inside warm dwellings or portable prairie teepees. A vast, strategically important portion of their food was safely hidden in specially dug and carefully camouflaged underground pits. On the Great Plains, these hiding places sometimes reached depths of several meters, extending down to a protective layer of constant, stable temperature. The shape of such a complex earthen storage pit often resembled a huge, pot-bellied jug with a very narrow neck and a wide, flat bottom. The process of creating such an underground storage pit was a true feat of engineering, requiring considerable effort and a deep understanding of soil properties. The women of the tribe dug deep pits using sturdy shovels made from broad bison shoulder blades and strong sticks. The earthen walls were carefully leveled and tightly packed to prevent any crumbling of dry soil into the cache. Then the bottom and walls were generously lined with a thick layer of completely dry grass, straw, or tree bark for waterproofing. This natural lining served as an ideal barrier, absorbing any accidental moisture from the surrounding frozen ground. The secret to the effectiveness of such underground storage sites lay in utilizing the natural thermos effect at great depth. 2 to 3 meters underground, the temperature remained consistently cool even during the hottest summer heat. And during the harsh winter, when the ground froze and was covered with snow, this same layer prevented the food from turning to ice. The pit maintained an ideal microclimate in which dried meat and fats could be stored for months without the slightest sign of spoilage. This technology was particularly important for nomadic tribes that constantly moved across vast and wild territories. Nomads often left such caches at their traditional summer campsites when setting out on long winter hunts in the forests. If the hunt proved completely unsuccessful and the tribe faced starvation, they always knew where to return to in an emergency. Digging up an old cache was hard work, especially if the ground above it had frozen deep and solid. But the bags of pemmican dug up from the ground became a true lifeline for dozens of families exhausted by the cold. This was their main strategic reserve, guaranteeing survival in the event of the most unforeseen climatic disasters. A properly constructed and airtight pit kept the supplies fresh and edible for several long years. It was the most important strategic reserve in case the long winter hunt proved completely unsuccessful for the entire tribe. The discovery of such a rich cache was always accompanied by immense, heartfelt joy and deep relief for the entire Native American settlement. Did you know about the existence of such sophisticated and effective underground storage facilities among the nomadic peoples of North America? In the next chapter, you will learn exactly how they prepared fresh meat for such long-term storage without a single gram of salt. Preserving meat required special skills from the indigenous peoples, as they used almost no salt at all. The primary method of reliable preservation was the rapid removal of moisture from the product using a steady breeze and gentle heat. The meat was sliced into incredibly thin, almost transparent strips using sharp flint or bone knives. These wafer-thin strips were carefully hung on tall wooden frames, constantly exposed to the dry, swift winds of the steppe. Direct sunlight and a continuous flow of fresh air quickly dried the meat fibers to the consistency of hard, dense cardboard. Special attention was paid during drying to protecting the future food supply from insects and sudden downpours. Small, heavily smoking fires made from green wood were often lit beneath the wooden poles on which the meat hung. The thick, acrid smoke effectively repelled flies and created a thin, protective crust on the surface of the meat, preventing spoilage. This process of light smoking gave the product a characteristic pleasant aroma and further extended its long shelf life. If the sky suddenly clouded over, the women would instantly gather all the layers and hide them in dry, waterproof leather covers. The absence of moisture in the product's structure was the main and only secret to its successful overwintering without salt. In winter, when temperatures dropped well below freezing, moist meat would instantly turn into a solid chunk of inedible ice. Thawing such a block without losing its nutritional value would have been an incredibly difficult task under camping conditions. The dried product, however, was completely unaffected by low temperatures and remained light, crisp, and ready for immediate consumption. The Native Americans learned to harness the laws of physics, using the hot sun to protect against the coming icy cold. In the rainy climate of the northwest coast, the technology for drying meat and fish had its own unique and complex characteristics. Due to the high, constant humidity, drying in the open sun was practically impossible. So the food was dried inside dwellings. Huge slabs of salmon or venison were hung high under the roof, directly above the constantly burning hearths. The process was longer and required more firewood, but the result was just as reliable and long-lasting. Smoke played a primary role here, acting as the main preservative in conditions of constant thick fog and frequent rain. Meat dried in this painstaking manner became a versatile and incredibly light field ration for all warriors. It could be chewed dry during a long ambush or an extended forced march without wasting precious time building fires. In the stomach, these tough fibers slowly swelled, creating a long-lasting and steady feeling of pleasant, satisfying fullness. The water a hunter drank from a stream completed the process, turning a dry piece of meat into a full, satisfying meal. This absolute simplicity and phenomenal functionality made dried meat the king of Native American nomadic logistics. These incredible volumes of stored provisions required a massive number of animals to be hunted during the short autumn season. The success of the Grand Autumn Hunt determined the fate of thousands of people on the Great Plains for the next 6 long months. That is precisely why hunters risked their lives, driving huge herds of bison or deer into special natural traps. The cost of a mistake at this stage was too high. A tribe with empty drying racks was doomed to certain death. Dried meat was not just food, it was the very embodiment of life itself in the harsh northern winter. There was nothing superfluous in the Indians' winter diet, and every edible part of the hunted game was used to the fullest. A special, honored place in the strategic winter stores was always held by the carefully extracted and preserved animal bone marrow. The large tubular bones of bison were split open with heavy stone hammers right on the large flat boulders near the settlement. The nutritious pulp extracted from them was boiled in water for a long time until pure white fat rose to the surface. It was carefully scooped up with wooden spoons and immediately poured into special airtight pouches made of thick, natural leather. The value of bone marrow lay in its simply incredible caloric content and unique, rich chemical composition. This product was a concentrate of the purest natural energy, enriched with rare trace elements and vital vitamins. In terms of energy density, it far surpassed even the finest lard or solid bear fat. The Native Americans intuitively understood the immense healing power of this byproduct and treasured it as nature's greatest treasure. The bone marrow pouches were always stored in the driest and most secure places, far from accidental drafts and dampness. Often, bone marrow was carefully mixed with dried herbs or sweet berries, creating a special ritual winter delicacy. This exquisite mixture was served on special holidays or offered to the tribe's most honored and important guests in the teepee. The soft, creamy texture of the fat paired perfectly with the tart flavor of the dried herbs, creating a unique culinary bouquet. Such a dish symbolized the highest degree of prosperity, deep respect, and sincere hospitality in the harsh steppe conditions. It was tangible proof that the tribe had successfully overcome the challenges of the wild and accumulated a surplus. For small children and the very elderly, this product was truly vital and of critical importance in winter. Their weakened bodies could not always cope with digesting tough, dry meat or coarse, everyday pemmican. Soft bone marrow was the ideal solution. It was easy to swallow, required no chewing at all, and was instantly absorbed. It provided the weakened immune system with the necessary building blocks to successfully withstand the winter winds. Thanks to this resource, the most vulnerable members of the community had a high chance of safely surviving until the long-awaited warm spring. Knowledge of the properties of bone marrow was deeply woven into the complex system of religious beliefs of the nomadic steppe tribes. An animal that gave its bones for the sake of human survival was honored with the highest praise in long shamanic songs. The Native Americans believed that, along with the marrow, they absorbed the incredible strength, endurance, and great spirit of the slain bison. This spiritual aspect made the act of eating the fat not merely a mundane meal, but a sacred, ancient act of communion with the wild. For them, physical survival was inextricably linked to the deepest mystical experiences in ancient rituals. The concentration of beneficial acids in collagen makes it indispensable for maintaining joint health and immunity in any climate. What was the only way for Native Americans to avoid freezing to death is now sold as a premium superfood in cans. Their wisdom, born of a harsh struggle for survival, has once again proven to be absolutely accurate and in demand centuries later. Successful survival in the harsh, icy climate was absolutely impossible without strict social organization and mutual support. Individual family reserves certainly existed, but during periods of severe famine all available resources became strictly communal. Tribal leaders and respected elders took great care to ensure that no family was left without the bare necessities. The most successful hunters always willingly shared their catch with those who were physically unable to provide for themselves. This strict system of social justice ensured that even solitary elderly people consistently received their share of pemmican. The tradition of mandatory food sharing was embedded in the very foundation of the culture of all Native American peoples. Greed or withholding food from one's starving fellow tribespeople was considered the gravest and most shameful of crimes. A person caught hiding a stash from a community dying of hunger was subjected to immediate and permanent exile. And in the harsh, snowy winter, solitary exile into the wild steppe meant certain and very rapid death. The fear of public condemnation and death made the system of food distribution flawless and absolutely reliable. Generosity was considered one of the most important virtues of any self-respecting Native American, on par with bravery in battle. The tribal chief was often the poorest person in the camp, as he distributed all his possessions in food to those in need. His immense authority rested not on accumulated wealth, but on his ability to protect and feed absolutely all of his people. Holding regular feasts during times of abundance was a way to demonstrate this generosity and strengthen social bonds within the tribe. Feeding a stranger or a guest was considered a matter of the greatest honor, even if the host had to give away their very last morsel. The concept of a hungry winter did not mean a complete lack of food, but rather the necessity of subsisting solely on preserved summer supplies. During such periods, hunting fresh meat became impossible due to deep snow and the migration of vast herds of bison far to the south. It was then that the entire system of resource gathering and fair distribution, established by the community in the summer, was put to the test. If the summer labor had been diligent and the hiding places reliable, the tribe would endure this long period without severe, fatal losses. A perfectly functioning system of mutual aid served as an invisible shield that protected them from the merciless laws of the wild. Under such conditions, the communal cauldron became a true symbol of the physical survival and spiritual unity of the entire nomadic people. Cooking, once a private matter for a single family, transformed into a complex, strictly regulated collective social process. Women gathered around huge central fires to cook life-sustaining broths together from shared supplies. This process was accompanied by quiet songs and long conversations that helped relieve mounting psychological tension. Collective labor and shared meals erased any internal conflicts, uniting people in the face of a massive external threat. This survival system proves that indigenous peoples relied not only on their physical strength and sharp arrows. Their main weapon in the fight against the cold was incredibly strong, centuries-honed social cohesion and empathy. They understood that surviving alone in the icy wilderness was simply impossible, no matter how strong an individual might be. Only by pooling all their resources and supporting the weak could they overcome the most terrifying and protracted climatic trials. Their society was a vast, coordinated organism in which every cell worked for the sake of the collective, guaranteed survival. The presence of full food warehouses and untouched underground caches radically changed the psychological state of everyone in the tribe. Winter completely ceased to be a time of insurmountable animal terror and a constant, desperate struggle for every day lived. Anxiety quickly gave way to deep calm as each family saw their substantial, neatly stacked food supplies. The feeling of a full stomach before bed gave people absolute confidence in their own safety and in the coming morning. People could fully focus on repairing old equipment, creating beautiful new clothing, and telling long stories by the warm hearth. Freedom from the constant, oppressive fear of starvation unleashed the immense creative and spiritual potential of the entire people. The long winter months became the prime time for conducting complex religious ceremonies and teaching the younger generation. The elders recounted ancient myths and legends, passing on the tribe's invaluable experience and complex philosophy to new generations of listeners. In the warm teepees, clothing richly decorated with beads was sewn, new bows were carved, and beautiful ritual objects were created. It was precisely this well-fed and peaceful winter that served as the true cradle of these tribes' unique, rich material and spiritual culture. The absence of the need to risk their lives daily on the hunt in the bitter cold preserved the strength and health of many men. They could rest peacefully on thick hides, recovering from the grueling autumn season of massive bison drives. This long break from strenuous physical activity was vital for maintaining the health of the entire male population of the community. The body had the opportunity to heal old injuries and build up new energy for the coming spring expeditions and military engagements. Winter transformed from a merciless executioner into a strict but just healer, granting a long rest to those who were prepared. Satiety also directly influenced the overall atmosphere within the camp, minimizing any conflicts and quarrels. Hungry people are always irritable, aggressive, and prone to panic, which often destroys communities from within at the slightest difficulty. A well-fed tribe, on the other hand, demonstrated incredible friendliness, a willingness to compromise, and a readiness to help all their neighbors. Laughter and the sounds of drums often echoed throughout the snow-covered camp, contrasting with the howling of the icy steppe wind outside. The inner warmth of human interaction perfectly complemented the physical warmth derived from rich pemmican and bear fat. Successfully weathering the long winter was always seen as a tremendous collective victory over the most powerful forces of the wild. In the spring, when the snow began to melt and the first green grass appeared, the tribe held grand celebrations and ceremonies of Thanksgiving. They praised the spirits for the fact that their knowledge of meat preservation and the construction of underground pits had once again not failed them. This successful, cyclical experience strengthened their faith in the correctness of their ancient traditions and the wisdom of their long-gone ancestors. They entered the new warm season full of strength, pride, and absolute confidence in their unshakable right to live on this land. Every winter they survived became a new, valuable lesson that was carefully analyzed and memorized by all the camp elders. If a caching site became damp or the meat spoiled, these mistakes were discussed in detail so they would never be repeated in the future. Techniques for drying and rendering bone marrow were constantly refined, brought to an absolute, flawless, practical ideal. The Indians were not merely children of the wilderness. They were its most attentive students and the most talented engineers of their way of life. Their ability to adapt to the harshest conditions inspires genuine admiration even among modern survival experts. The history of these peoples is a great saga of how human intelligence and social cohesion can overcome any frost. They proved that even in the most hostile climate, it is possible not only to survive in torment, but also to build a full, joyful life. Their culinary techniques, underground storage facilities, and warm dwellings were a true triumph of human will over the icy chaos. Knowledge of the properties of fats, dried meat, and coniferous decoctions allowed them to sleep soundly even during the fiercest blizzards. An empty stomach would indeed mean a quick death from the cold, but they did everything to ensure their stomachs remained full until spring. Native American methods of conserving heat and energy demonstrate just how deeply these people understood the harsh laws of the surrounding wilderness. Their complex winter diet was built around a single primary goal: to guarantee survival through the severe frosts without physical loss. Knowledge of the incredible properties of rich fats, dried bison meat, and healing coniferous decoctions saved countless generations. Please write in the comments what other interesting topics about the daily lives of indigenous peoples you'd like to see in future videos. And be sure to subscribe to our channel so you never miss new and fascinating historical research and facts.